First contact in the ruins. The ruins of New Oslo stretched endlessly beneath a purple sky, its broken towers reaching toward distant stars like skeletal fingers. Nova Reynolds moved silently through the debris, her medic's kit weighing heavily against her hip. 6 months into the interstellar war, and this once thriving colony had become nothing more than another battlefield. She paused, her hand instinctively moving to the medical scanner at her belt. Something was different. The usual silence of the ruins was broken by a faint sound, breathing, labored, and uneven. Nova followed the sound to its source, her boots crunching softly on broken glass. There, wedged between fallen support beams, lay a figure she'd never seen before. The alien skin held an iridescent quality, shifting between deep purple and midnight blue. 2 delicate antennae twitched weakly atop its head. "Don't move," Nova said softly, kneeling beside the injured creature. "I'm a medic. I can help." The alien's eyes, all 4 of them, opened slowly, revealing swirling patterns of gold and silver. It spoke, the words coming out as a series of musical tones that Nova couldn't understand. She activated her universal translator, letting it calibrate to the alien's unique speech patterns. "Can you understand me now?" Nova asked, already pulling out her medical scanner. "Yes," the alien responded, voice still weak but now comprehensible. "I am Lyra, xenobiologist from the Varian Science Academy. Please, the data must not fall into wrong hands." Nova's scanner revealed multiple injuries: internal bleeding, fractured bones, severe dehydration. "You're hurt badly," she said, preparing a stabilizing injection. "Whatever data you're carrying can wait. First priority is keeping you alive." Lyra's hand shot out, surprisingly strong despite her injuries, gripping Nova's wrist. "You don't understand. This data could end the war, save both our species." Nova hesitated, her training warring with her curiosity. Finally, she nodded. "All right. Let me stabilize you. Then we'll talk about this data. Deal?" As she worked to heal Lyra's injuries, Nova couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped into something much bigger than a simple rescue mission. The war had been raging for months, with neither side gaining a clear advantage. If Lyra was telling the truth about the data she carried, a distant explosion rocked the ruins, sending cascades of dust raining down around them. Nova cursed under her breath. "We need to move. Can you walk?" Lyra struggled to her feet, leaning heavily against Nova. "There is a secure facility, 2 kilometers east. My research team." "Was anyone else with you?" Nova asked, already guiding them toward cover. Lyra's antennae drooped. "All dead. Ambushed by those who would prefer the war continues. Profit from it." Nova processed this information as they moved through the shadows. War profiteers weren't unique to humanity, it seemed. "Who attacked you?" "The Shadow Corp mercenaries. They hunt me still. The data I carry proves their involvement in prolonging the conflict, manufacturing reasons for both sides to continue fighting." They reached a partially collapsed building, and Nova helped Lyra inside. As she set up a temporary medical station, she couldn't help but notice how Lyra's hands kept moving to a small device secured at her waist. "That's it, isn't it?" Nova asked. "The data." Lyra nodded. "Everything we discovered about Shadow Corp's manipulation of both species. Evidence of manufactured conflicts, falsified attacks, corrupted peace negotiations, enough to expose them to both governments." Nova finished applying a regenerative patch to Lyra's worst injury. "Why trust me with this? I'm human. Your people and mine are at war." Lyra's 4 eyes fixed on Nova's face. "Because you stopped to help an enemy when you could have walked away. Perhaps there is hope for both our species after all." Another explosion, closer this time. Nova quickly packed up her medical supplies. "We need to move. That secure facility you mentioned, can you guide us there?" Lyra nodded, her color shifting slightly as her strength returned. "Yes. But Nova, by helping me, you become a target too. Shadow Corp will not show mercy." Nova checked her medical kit and the small sidearm she carried. Wouldn't be the first time I've had people trying to kill me. Comes with the job. She helped Lyra to her feet. Ready? Lyra's antennae twitched, sensing something in the distance. They come. We must hurry. As they moved deeper into the ruins, Nova realized she'd made her choice the moment she'd stopped to help Lyra. Whatever came next, they were in it together. A human medic and an alien scientist carrying data that could change everything. Trust among debris. The night air grew colder as Nova and Lyra made their way through the labyrinthine ruins. Shadows danced across broken walls, cast by the three moons hanging low in the alien sky. Every few minutes, Lyra would pause, her antennae quivering as she sensed for pursuit. The facility entrance lies beneath an old atmospheric processing plant, Lyra explained as they moved. If we can reach it, the security systems may still be operational. Nova adjusted her grip on Lyra's arm, supporting her injured companion. And if they're not? Then we improvise, Lyra replied, showing a hint of humor despite their situation. I believe humans are quite skilled at that. A sudden burst of weapons fire cut through the air above them. Nova pulled Lyra down behind a fallen pillar, her medical scanner automatically tracking Lyra's vital signs. The aliens' injuries were stable, but the stress of their flight was taking its toll. Shadow Corp, Lyra whispered, her iridescent skin darkening with stress. They track us by thermal signatures. My species runs warmer than yours. Nova reached into her medic kit, pulling out several emergency heat packs. Then let's give them something else to chase. She activated the packs and threw them in different directions, creating multiple heat signatures across the ruins. Lyra's eyes widened. Clever, but they will realize the deception soon. Soon is all we need. Nova helped Lyra up, leading them through a narrow passage between collapsed buildings. Tell me more about this data. What exactly did you discover? Lyra's antennae twitched nervously. Shadow Corp has agents in both governments. They engineered the incident at Colony 7, the one that sparked the war. It was all orchestrated to drive our species apart. Nova remembered the Colony 7 massacre. Hundreds dead, both human and Varian. It had been the catalyst that turned simmering tensions into open warfare. Why? What do they gain? Weapons contracts, resource rights, control. Lyra's voice carried a deep sadness. They profit from chaos, and peace threatens their power. They reached a clearing that had once been a market square. Nova scanned the area, noting the multiple exposed sightlines. We'll have to cross quickly. Ready? Lyra nodded, but before they could move, a deep humming filled the air. Nova looked up to see a Shadow Corp patrol drone hovering above them, its sensors already locking on. Run, Nova shouted, pulling Lyra toward the nearest cover. Weapons fire rained down around them, turning debris into molten slag. Lyra stumbled, her injuries slowing her down. Without hesitation, Nova scooped up the alien scientist, surprised by how light she was despite being slightly taller than a human. They dove through a broken window just as the drone unleashed another barrage. The processing plant, Lyra gasped, pointing toward a massive structure looming in the distance. We're close. Nova pulled out her sidearm, setting it to overload. Cover your eyes. She threw the weapon back through the window. The resulting explosion caught the drone mid-turn, sending it crashing into a nearby building. Impressive improvisation, Lyra commented as they caught their breath. Told you it comes with the job. Nova checked Lyra's injuries, applying a fresh regenerative patch, though I usually prefer healing to destroying. Lyra's hand found Nova's, squeezing gently. Sometimes to heal, we must first stop those who cause harm. More drones could be heard in the distance. Nova helped Lyra to her feet, and they pressed on toward the processing plant. The massive facility rose before them, its walls scarred by battle damage, but still largely intact. There, Lyra pointed to a maintenance access panel nearly hidden by debris. The entrance to the secure facility lies beyond. As they approached the panel, Nova noticed something odd about the debris covering it. This was arranged deliberately. Someone's been here recently. Lyra's antennae straightened in alarm. Could be Shadow Corp, or she trailed off, her four eyes scanning the shadows. Or, Nova prompted, already not liking where this was going. There were others, resistance fighters, both human and Varian, who knew of our research. They may have sought shelter here. Nova carefully moved some of the debris, revealing the access panel. Friends or enemies? Unknown, Lyra admitted. In times of war, such distinctions become complicated. The panel sparked to life under Lyra's touch, revealing an entrance to a dark tunnel sloping downward. From somewhere in the darkness came the faint sound of machinery. Still has power, Nova observed. That's either very good or very bad. Lyra's skin shifted colors slightly, a sign of determination. We have no choice. The data must reach those who can use it. Nova checked her medical supplies and their surroundings one last time. After you, scientist. Let's see what other surprises this night has in store. They descended into the tunnel, leaving the ruined city behind. As the entrance sealed behind them, Nova couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far more dangerous than what they'd left behind. But with Shadow Corp closing in and Lyra's vital data possibly holding the key to peace, there was no turning back now. Hidden knowledge. The facility hummed with ancient power, emergency lights casting strange shadows along the curved walls. Nova noticed how Lyra's skin seemed to glow faintly in the dim light, creating patterns that shifted with each movement. The research labs should be 2 levels down, Lyra explained as they navigated the winding corridors. If they remain intact, we can use the equipment to decrypt the full data set. Nova kept her remaining medical supplies ready, eyes scanning for threats. You mentioned resistance fighters. What exactly were you researching here before the attack? Lyra paused at an intersection, her antennae twitching as she oriented herself. This facility was more than just a lab. It was a collaboration, started in secret before the war. Humans and Varians working together to understand each other. They reached a sealed door, its control panel dark. Lyra placed her hand against it, and Nova watched in fascination as bioluminescent patterns flowed from the alien skin into the circuitry. The door shuddered open. Biological interface technology, Lyra explained, noting Nova's expression. My species developed it centuries ago. Your people would have learned of it eventually, had Shadow Corp not intervened. The lab beyond the door was a mess of overturned equipment and scattered datapads. Nova helped Lyra to a central workstation that still showed signs of power. Looks like someone left in a hurry. Or was forced to, Lyra added grimly. She pulled out the data device from her waist, connecting it to the workstation. Screens flickered to life around them, filling with streams of alien and human text. Nova stood guard while Lyra worked, but her curiosity drew her eyes to the displays. What am I looking at? Proof, Lyra said, her fingers dancing across the interface. Genetic studies showing our species share a common ancestor, archaeological evidence of ancient contact, and most importantly, records of Shadow Corp's systematic destruction of this evidence. A sound echoed from somewhere in the facility. Nova moved closer to Lyra, scanning the shadows. We're not alone down here. Almost done, Lyra whispered, her skin pulsing with tension. The final decryption sequence. The lights went out. In the sudden darkness, Nova could hear movement all around them. Lyra's bioluminescence provided the only illumination, making her an easy target. Step away from the console, a voice commanded in accented human standard. Both of you. Nova raised her hand slowly, positioning herself between Lyra and the voice. We're not your enemies. We have proof that Shadow Corp started this war. So you claim, another voice added, this one speaking in Varian tones. If you could be Shadow Corp agents yourselves, seeking to eliminate the last of us. Lyra spoke up, her voice carrying an authority Nova hadn't heard before. I am Lyra. lead researcher of Project Unity. Verification code, stellar dawn convergence. A long pause followed. Then, gradually, lights began to come back on. Nova found themselves surrounded by a mixed group of humans and Varians, all bearing the marks of long-term survival in the ruins. Their leader, a scared human woman with cybernetic augmentations, stepped forward. "I am Commander Raven. We've been protecting this facility since the attack. Dr. Lyra, we feared you were dead." Lyra's antennae relaxed slightly. "The rest of my team, they didn't make it. But we completed the research. All of it." A tall Varian male moved to the workstation, his scaled armor marking him as a warrior caste. "The data is genuine, Commander. Encryption signatures match our records." Raven studied Nova intently. "And you? How does a human medic fit into this?" "She saved my life," Lyra said firmly. "Without her, the data would have been lost." Nova kept her voice steady. "I took an oath to heal. Doesn't specify which species." Raven's cybernetic eye weird as it scanned them both. Finally, she nodded. "Welcome to the Resistance, medic. You've just stepped into a very old war. Older than you know," the Varian warrior added. "Show them, Lyra. Show them what we found in the deep archives." Lyra's hands moved across the console again, bringing up new displays. Nova's eyes widened as she took in images of ancient ruins, star maps, and what appeared to be hybrid technology. "Our peoples weren't meant to be enemies," Lyra explained. "We were meant to be allies, partners. ShadowCorp didn't just start this war. They prevented a reunion millennia in the making." Warning klaxons suddenly blared throughout the facility. Raven's augmented eye flashed red. "Perimeter breach. They found us." Nova looked at the assembled group, humans and Varians standing together, united by a hidden truth. "Then let's make sure they regret it." As they prepared for battle, Nova realized that her simple rescue mission had evolved into something far more significant. They weren't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to restore a connection that should never have been broken. Pursuit through darkness. The secure facility shook with the force of distant explosions. Raven's resistance fighters moved with practiced efficiency, securing equipment and establishing defensive positions. "They're using sonic breaching charges," the Varian warrior, who had introduced himself as Zenth, reported. "Trying to collapse the upper levels to trap us." Nova helped Lyra gather the most crucial data cores while Raven coordinated the defense. "Is there another way out of here?" "The maintenance tunnels," Lyra replied, her antennae detecting subtle vibrations through the walls. "They connect to an old transit system beneath the city, but they're unstable, partially flooded." Raven's cybernetic eye projected a holographic map of the tunnel system. "ShadowCorp will expect us to use the main exits. We split up. Multiple teams, multiple targets. They can't chase everyone." Nova watched as resistance members paired up, human and Varian together, years of fighting alongside each other evident in their fluid coordination. She felt Lyra's hand on her arm. "The data must reach the Joint Council," Lyra said quietly. "Everything we discovered. The shared ancestry, the manipulation, all of it. It's the only way to stop this war." Another explosion rocked the facility, closer this time. Dust rained from the ceiling as lights flickered. Raven issued rapid commands, sending teams toward different escape routes. "Nova, Lyra," Raven called them over. "Take the eastern tunnel, Zenth, and I will draw their main force west. Rendezvous at the old observatory if you make it out." "When we make it out," Nova corrected, checking her remaining medical supplies. They might need them. Water dripped steadily as they entered the maintenance tunnel, the air growing thick with moisture. Lyra's bioluminescence provided enough light to navigate by, though Nova noticed how the alien scientists' glow had dimmed, a sign of exhaustion. They splashed through ankle-deep water, the sounds of battle growing more distant. Nova kept one hand on the tunnel wall, her medical scanner providing basic proximity alerts. Something about the tunnel felt wrong. "Wait," Lyra suddenly whispered, her antennae rigid. Movement ahead. Nova pulled them into a recessed maintenance alcove just as voices echoed down the tunnel. Shadow Corp operators, speaking in harsh whispers. They'd predicted this route. Nova breathed. We need another way. Lyra's eyes focused on a partially submerged access panel. The water main runs parallel to this tunnel. If we can access it, we'd have a clear path, but limited air, Nova finished. How long can your species hold their breath? Longer than humans, Lyra replied. But in my current condition. Nova pulled out her last regenerative patch, applying it to Lyra's worst injury. This should help. But we'll need to move fast. They waited until the Shadow Corp voices passed. Then Lyra interfaced with the access panel. The wall slid open with a wet grinding sound, revealing a larger tunnel filled halfway with water. Stay close to me, Nova said, securing their most critical supplies in waterproof pouches. If you start to struggle, signal immediately. I didn't keep you alive this long to lose you now. Lyra's skin rippled with what Nova had learned was amusement. Your bedside manner needs work, medic. They slipped into the cold water, moving as quietly as possible. Nova's medical training helped her regulate her breathing, but she worried about Lyra's injuries. The alien scientist pushed forward determinedly, her bioluminescence creating eerie patterns in the dark water. They had covered maybe half the distance when Nova's scanner picked up movement above them. Shadow Corp had figured out their trick. Charges. Lyra's warning came just as explosions rocked the tunnel. Water rushed in as sections of the ceiling collapsed. Nova grabbed Lyra's arm, pulling them both forward as debris rained down behind them. They swam desperately, lungs burning, pushing against the current that threatened to drag them under. Nova's vision started to blur at the edges. Just when she thought they couldn't go any further, Lyra pulled them sideways into a maintenance shaft. They broke the surface, gasping for air. You, okay? Nova managed between breaths. Lyra nodded, though her skin had taken on a darker hue. The data, still secure. They pulled themselves onto a narrow maintenance platform, listening to the rush of water below. In the distance, they could hear Shadow Corp teams coordinating their search. The observatory, Lyra said quietly. It's not far now. But we'll have to cross open ground to reach it, Nova finished. She checked their remaining supplies. Meager, but they'd have to make do. Lyra's antennae twitched. Nova, thank you. For everything. If we don't. Save it. Nova interrupted gently. We're not done yet. Besides, I want to see Shadow Corp's face when they realize they failed to keep our species apart. A faint smile crossed Lyra's alien features. Then let us hope Raven and the others made it out as well. We will need all the allies we can get for what comes next. They rested briefly, gathering strength for the final push. Ahead lay the observatory, and possibly their best chance at ending the war. Behind them, Shadow Corp's forces gathered, determined to keep the truth buried. Nova checked her scanner one last time. Ready? Lyra's skin brightened with renewed determination. Ready. Together, they moved forward into the darkness, carrying with them the hope of two species who should never have been enemies. Unlikely allies. The observatory loomed against the night sky, its damaged dome reflecting moonlight in broken patterns. Nova and Lyra approached cautiously, keeping to the shadows of the surrounding ruins. Something's wrong, Lyra whispered, her antennae detecting unusual vibrations. There's too much electronic interference. Nova's medical scanner confirmed Lyra's suspicions, picking up multiple power signatures. Could be Raven's team. Or a trap, Lyra added, her skin darkening with concern. They found their answer as they neared the observatory's entrance. Bodies lay scattered. Shadow Corp operators, their armor bearing fresh plasma burns. But these weren't resistance weapons. Pirates, a voice called from above. Nova and Lyra spun to see a figure perched on a broken column. Seems we're all hunting the same prize tonight. The speaker dropped down gracefully. A human woman with extensive cybernetic modifications far more advanced than Raven's. Gold circuits traced patterns across her dark skin, and her eyes glowed with an unnatural amber light. "Jakarta," Lyra hissed, her antennae flattening against her head. "Notorious information broker. Deals to both sides." Jakarta smiled, the expression not reaching her augmented eyes. "And here I thought I was unknown in academic circles. Dr. Lyra, your research has caused quite a stir. Plenty of buyers interested in what you've discovered." Nova positioned herself between Lyra and Jakarta. "The truth isn't for sale." "Everything's for sale, medic," Jakarta countered. "But perhaps we can help each other. Shadow Corp's forces are closing in. My ship is nearby, and I have resources you lack." Before they could respond, new explosions lit up the night sky. Dropships bearing Shadow Corp's insignia descended through the clouds, their searchlights sweeping the ruins. Jakarta's smile widened. "Time to decide. Die here with your principles, or live to expose the truth another day." Nova and Lyra shared a quick glance. "Your ship," Nova said carefully. "How close?" "Underground hangar, connected to the old maintenance tunnels." "Follow me." Jakarta turned, then paused. "Oh, and you might want to duck." Plasma fire erupted overhead as Jakarta's pirate crew engaged the Shadow Corp dropships. In the chaos, they slipped into the observatory's lower levels, Jakarta leading them through a maze of corridors. "Why help us?" Lyra demanded as they ran. "What do you gain?" Jakarta laughed. "Shadow Corp's been bad for business, forcing everyone to pick sides. I prefer a galaxy where allegiances are fluid. Your data could destabilize their power base." They reached a heavy blast door marked with warning signs in multiple languages. Jakarta interfaced with the control panel, her cybernetics glowing brighter. "Company coming," Nova warned, hearing footsteps approaching from multiple directions. The blast door opened with a hiss, revealing the cavernous hangar. A sleek ship waited, its design unlike anything Nova had seen. A hybrid of human and Varian technology. "Impressed?" Jakarta asked, noting their expressions. "Amazing what you can build when you ignore artificial boundaries between species." More explosions rocked the structure. Jakarta's crew appeared from various entrances, laying down covering fire as they retreated to the ship. "Raven and the others." Lyra started, but Jakarta cut her off. "Already aboard. Picked them up an hour ago. Your resistance friends are smarter than you. They know when to accept help." Nova followed Lyra up the ship's ramp, finding Raven and several resistance members in the cargo hold. The commander's cybernetic eye narrowed at Jakarta. "Still don't trust you," Raven stated flatly. Jakarta shrugged. "Wise policy. But right now, we all want the same thing. Shadow Corp's downfall." The ship's engines hummed to life as Shadow Corp forces breached the hangar. Zenth manned a defense turret, buying time for launch preparations. "One problem," Jakarta announced, her hands dancing across the control panel. "Hangar doors are sealed. Manual override required from the control room." Nova looked at the distance to the control room, calculating. "Cover me." "Nova." "No," Lyra started, but Nova was already moving. Plasma fire filled the air as Nova sprinted across the hangar floor. Her medical training helped her spot gaps in Shadow Corp's formation. They weren't expecting someone to run toward them. She reached the control room, fingers flying across the ancient controls. The hangar doors began to open painfully slowly as Shadow Corp troops converged on her position. "Jump." Jakarta's voice came through her comm unit. "Now." Nova threw herself from the control room just as the ship rose. She caught the edge of the lowered ramp, feeling multiple hands pull her to safety as plasma bolts sizzled past. The ship shot through the opening hangar doors, accelerating hard enough that Nova felt it in her bones. Lyra helped her up, all four eyes bright with relief. That, Jakarta called from the cockpit, was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. I can never tell with medics. Nova managed a weak smile, part of the job description. As the ship broke atmosphere, Nova looked around at their unlikely crew, resistance fighters, pirates, humans, and Varians, all united against a common enemy. Jakarta was right about one thing. Artificial boundaries between species had only served Shadow Corp's interests. So, Raven asked, her cybernetic eye fixed on Jakarta. Where exactly are you taking us? Jakarta's laugh echoed through the ship's intercom. Somewhere Shadow Corp would never think to look. Tell me, how do you all feel about visiting the place where it all began? Lyra's antennae straightened in surprise. You don't mean? Oh yes, Jakarta confirmed. We're going to the ruins of first contact. Time to uncover some real ancient history.